Okay, as we move closer to actually installing Exchange Server, we need to talk about Forest Prep. Forest Prep is a utility that we're going to run before we install Exchange that's going to extend Active Directory. If you want to think about it this way, it's going to add a couple of columns to that Active Directory database so that we can then store Exchange information in Active Directory. Now, it's also going to establish our first Exchange 2003 administrator account. It's going to set up some groups and give them the proper permissions and so forth. And again, it's going to add some new classes and attributes to Active Directory so Exchange 2003 can participate in Active Directory functionality. Now, there's a couple of ways to run Forest Prep, and this can be somewhat confusing because it's different from the running Exchange 2000 in the Forest before this. You still have to run the Exchange 2003 Forest Prep. Why? Because there have been some schema changes made between 2000 and 2003. Now, what schema changes, you may ask? Well, if you want to nerd out on that, you can go to one of the appendices in a white paper called What's New in Exchange Server 2003. Now, you can find this paper right now at microsoft.com/exchange/library. Now, depending on when you get this video, Microsoft, I've mentioned it earlier in the course, always puts lots of technical documentation out there for new products. This stuff will start to disappear and go away over time. So you may want to go check this library. If you can't, do a search on what's new in Exchange Server 2003, and it should be out there for quite some time. Now, as information, Forest Prep should be run in the domain where the schema master resides. Why? Because in Active Directory there are some roles that just simply cannot be performed by just any domain controller or multiple domain controllers, and these are called single master operations role domain controllers. One of these is the schema master. It is responsible for making any adjustments to the Active Directory schema for everybody in the entire forest. If we're not in the same domain where the schema master resides, we're going to have to pass quite a bit of information across the network. It's not going to be nearly as reliable. It's not going to be nearly as efficient. So what's going to happen is you're going to be advised when you begin to run Forest Prep if you're not in the proper domain. It will stop and not run Forest Prep, and it will advise you which domain you should be in to do this. So let's look at an example of running Forest Prep and show you kind of a little gotcha here. So what I'll do now is I'll go to Start and then choose Run. And in the open box here, I want to type CMD to get my command prompt. Now, on my computer, the CD-ROM is the drive G. So I'm going to put G:\\, and I'm going to call the setup command.exe to set up Exchange off my Exchange 2003 CD. Then I'm going to give it a switch /Forest Prep. Now, if I misspell Forest Prep right here, it will simply do an install of Exchange. And I don't want that. I want to run Forest Prep. If I get it right here, I will simply run the Forest Prep utility. So if I press enter here, you'll notice not a whole lot happens. One little clue here is the hourglass on my cursor. Now you'll notice it's going to click and hum a minute. It's telling us setup is loading some installation components. In a minute it's going to take us to the Exchange installation wizard, and we will click next. Here's our license agreement. We agree with all this. What are we agreeing with? Well, I would read it to you, but it would take the rest of the video time, and I don't think you would listen anyway, so for now we'll just agree. Basically saying we're not going to illegally copy the software and so on and so forth, all that stuff. What we come up to here is the Exchange Installation Wizard component selection screen. This is the first clue that I have spelled Forest Prep right because it's telling me that I'm going to run Forest Prep. Now you'll see the screen a little bit later for some other things. Notice it's telling us it needs 42 megabytes here. We've got almost a gig, so we're okay. And if I click next here, we would kick off Forest Prep. I'm not going to do that because it takes about 20 minutes and you don't want to watch that. Also, there's a different way to run Forest Prep now, and we'll look at it when we look at an actual installation just a little bit later on. But for now, that's Forest Prep. A little bit of background on what it does, one way to run it from a command prompt. And then again, we'll look at a different way a little bit later on. Next, let's move on to Domain Prep and talk about what that's going to do for us.